Mother put me up for adoption after my dad passed away, and she had an affair with my uncle. After years of no contact, she found me on social media pretending to want to reconnect. I am 17-year-old female, was recently contacted by my mother after 10 years of no contact. She put me up for adoption when I was 7 years old, and thankfully I was able to find a family willing to take me in. For the sake of clarity, while I'm narrating what happened, I'm going to be referring to my biological mother as Julia and my adoptive parents as mom and dad. Julia had me with my biological father when she was probably around 20 years old, and she had to drop out of college because of me. My biological father completed his education, and they got married right after he graduated. When I was around 3 years old, he was diagnosed with leukemia, and he passed away shortly after I turned 7. I guess the process for giving up my custody had already started long before my biological father passed away, because my mother gave me away, and I moved in with my new family literally just one day after my dad passed away. I remember it as clearly as yesterday, even today, in spite of the fact that 10 years have passed since then, just because I was so upset and confused about what was going on. I remember being told by several people that I would be just fine, that my father was in a better place and stuff, but all I wanted to do was see how he was doing. He had been pretty sick, but he was always there whenever I wanted to see him. However, I wasn't allowed to even say goodbye to him after he passed away. I barely had time to register and process these things when my new family showed up the day after my dad's demise, and my mom told me that these people were going to take care of me for a couple of days. But days turned into weeks, then into months, and eventually years. I kept waiting for my mother to reach out to me, and I remember crying a lot about this initially because I thought that my mother and my family had abandoned me. A few weeks after my mom and dad took me in, my biological grandparents came to see me, and they have been in touch with me since then. Back then, I was too young to be told the truth, but when I was around 14, they could not evade my questions anymore. I just really wanted to know what had happened with my birth mother because I was well aware of the fact that I was adopted. I just wanted to know why all of this had happened. Since I distinctly remember getting along well with my birth parents when I was little, I found out the truth from my grandparents and my mom and dad. Eventually, apparently after my biological father's diagnosis with leukemia, my mother was devastated. But instead of being there for him, she started an affair with my uncle. That was horrifying in itself, but nobody even knew about it until 6 months before my dad's demise, since his health had started worsening considerably. At that point, my uncle and Julia did not think there was any point in hiding their affair anymore because she knew that she wanted to be with him. As soon as my father was out of the picture, she was getting together with him. Julia and my uncle told their parents about it, and my grandparents were obviously disgusted with what was going on, but for my sick dad's sake, they kept their mouths shut about it. I was too young to understand, and they did not want my father finding out about any of this because he was already going through a lot. As it was around the same time that they came clean about the affair to my grandparents, my uncle and Julia also announced that they were not willing to raise me and were considering putting me up for adoption. There was a lot of hue and cry about it, but Julia was pretty firm about what she wanted. Apparently, she said that she had been much too young when she had me, and she didn't even want to be a mother. She did not feel ready at the time, and it was only because of her parents' insistence that she had me and got married to my father. Had her parents not pressured her, she probably wouldn't have done either of those things, and her life would have been very different. So now that my father was going to be out of the picture, she did not want me either, and she was going to put me up for adoption. It was obvious that they could not send me away as long as my father was alive. So they waited until he passed away, and after that, they allowed my mom and dad to finally take me in. Even my adoptive parents were very shocked by my situation, but they really just wanted to adopt a child and complete their family since they had been struggling to conceive for a second time after their first pregnancy, and it was too risky for my mom. Anyway, I know that my parents probably wanted to adopt a much younger kid, but they told me that they hadn't heard about me from any adoption agency. It was actually one of my mom's cousins who told her about my situation since she used to be friends with Julia back then. As soon as they heard about me, they knew that they had to get me out. They didn't even care about my age and spoke to my mother in person without any agencies involved. My mother agreed to let them adopt me because even she was struggling to find someone who was willing to adopt a 7-year-old kid through the agency. They spoke to Julia 4 months before my dad passed away, and a couple of weeks before his death, everything had been finalized. Even my mom and dad had believed that after my father passed away, I would probably be staying with Julia for a couple of days at least, but she sent me away literally the next day after I found out about the truth of the situation. I was really glad that Julia had decided to put me up for adoption, and I had been lucky enough to find such wonderful parents because people mostly go for younger kids when they are adopting. I found a really wonderful family I love, my mom and dad and my older brother, and I couldn't be happier. I also have literally 4 sets of grandparents, so you can imagine how spoiled have been ripe from my childhood. Nobody kept in touch with my uncle or Julia after my dad passed away, and they were not even there for his funeral, which had been organized by my grandparents. I was there because it was a very somber situation, and I was already going through a very confusing phase, so they thought it would be better for me to settle into my new life. After finding out the truth about why I had been put up for adoption and why Julia did not remain a part of my life, I had thought that I would feel unwanted, or at least a little upset about it. But I mostly just felt relieved that I did not end up spending life with my biological mother and found my way to people who actually wanted me. I'm 17 now, starting college in a couple of months, and I barely even think about Julia or my uncle or what they have been up to. But for the past couple of days, I haven't been able to stop thinking about them because she reached out to me on Instagram to ask me if I would be willing to meet with her and mend things. I have a public account, and it's obviously not difficult to find me, but I couldn't understand why she was reaching out to me after so many years. So before I agreed to anything, I decided to ask her why she wanted to mend things with me all of a sudden. Then she sent me a long and heartfelt message about how so much time had passed. But even now, she regretted her decision to give me up and prioritize her life with my uncle instead of her commitment as a mother. She said that she knew it was not her place to demand that I come back to her as her daughter, but she at least wanted me to know that she was not all wrong here. And the only mistake that she had made was that she had committed to a lot of things when she was too young to understand the repercussions of it. There was a lot of pressure on her, and that's why she had made a lot of bad decisions. But she never regretted having me, regardless of what my family might have told me. She was just not ready to be a mother, and she wanted to make things right with me. After thinking about it, I decided to say yes because I was just curious. I did not tell my parents or my grandparents about it. I just went ahead and met her. Only after I met her did I realize that she was not asking me to meet her only because she wanted to make things right with me. She needed my help. I should have realized that earlier, but unfortunately, I have a tendency to try and see the good in everyone, even someone like Julia. We met for lunch 2 days ago, and initially she seemed very warm and cordial with me. She tried to explain her side of the story, telling me that her parents insisted that she had to marry my father, drop out of college, and take care of me and stuff like that. And she just wasn't ready for any of it, but she had to do it because her parents insisted on it. She later started feeling very suffocated in her marriage, and the news of her husband's diagnosis was the last straw for her, which is why she was driven to have an affair. She did not regret it because she believed that my uncle was the love of her life, and she was glad to find him because she has been happily married to him for the past 8 years. While talking about my uncle, she started crying and told me that right now her marriage was in trouble, and that was part of the reason why she had come to me. She said that she needed my help in reconciling with her parents, and not just them, but also my father's parents. After she gave me away for adoption without even telling them, they had cut her off for the last 10 years and had nothing to do with my uncle or her. Both of them had been fine with it in the past, but for some reason my uncle had recently started fighting with Julia a lot because he wanted to reconcile with his parents, and he knew for a fact that they would never accept him back in their lives after everything that had happened. For some reason, he was blaming Julia for it, because he believed that if she hadn't been so hasty and giving me up to my adopted parents and had waited for a bit, then things wouldn't have gone so sour between all of them. So now the only solution that she could think of was to get me to talk to my grandparents and convince them to reconcile with my uncle and her. And maybe then she could save her marriage from falling apart. because she and my uncle had been fighting a lot over the past couple of weeks, and she couldn't think of any other way to deal with the situation apart from this. Honestly, there's nothing that I regret more in my life than having gone to meet that woman. Because clearly, she was not there to genuinely apologize to me, to offer an explanation to me, or even to make amends, like she claimed. She was only there because her marriage was in trouble, and she thought that I could help her out if I could. I don't think I would want to do that because she does not deserve my help after how selfish she has been. After hearing her out, I told her that her crocodile tears were not going to work on me, and I was about to leave, but she said that if I had been in her place, I would have understood her situation better. She said that she had been forced to become a mother when she wasn't even ready to do it mentally. And in spite of that, she had tried her best to be a good mother to me. If I couldn't even see that because I was so brainwashed by my family, then that just meant I was no different from the rest of them. That just really took me off, because so far she had only been a mother to me for 6 or 7 years. And even then, she had all the help in the world. I was pretty confident that she had not been told to drop out of college by my grandparents. That was her personal choice. They had told me several times that my mother had chosen to give birth to me. They had not insisted on anything, but had only advised her to have me and then see where it goes. She was the one who misconstrued it as pressure from them. And if it came down to choosing whom to trust between those two people, I would obviously pick my grandparents. So I told her that she could sell her bologna somewhere where people would be stupid enough to buy it. Since I was not, I told her. I did not believe a word of what she was saying, even though I'd been willing to give her a chance to be honest, to make amends with me like she said she wanted to. But she had cheapened her apology by trying to get me to fix her relationship without even trying to do it herself first. I told her that I was not obliged to do anything for her since we did not have any relationship. She might have given birth to me, but it was my mom who had raised me, not her. Then I walked out of the restaurant and went back home after that. Once I got back home, I realized that she had texted me, and it was a voice note of her crying. I could tell that she was still inside the restaurant because I could hear the background noise, and that's why I felt a bit guilty, because I'm pretty sure you have to be really devastated to start crying like that in a public space. She was crying and saying that it was really horrible of me to say that we did not have any relation, because no matter what had happened, she was still my biological mother, and I was her flesh and blood. And regardless of everything, she still considered me her daughter. But I don't know what to tell her. I really just don't consider her my mother anymore, and I don't really want to feel bad about it because I don't think it's necessary. She hasn't been my mother for the past 10 years. I just feel messy and conflicted because of the way she was crying on the phone, and even now, I haven't been able to bring myself to block her. I don't think of her as my mother, but she's still a human being who had a connection with me. Edit. Hi, so I thought it was very clear in my post that I haven't told my family about it. I don't think they would be on board with my decision to go meet Julia, and that's why I did not tell them before I made my decision. I know I owe this to them, and I'm definitely going to tell them. But for now, I just wanted this to be something that I made a call on by myself. Besides, I knew that if I had told them about it, they never would have let me meet her because all of them hated her, and rightfully. So I know that for a fact. I guess I just wanted some closure. And that's why I went to meet her in the first place. I didn't know what I was expecting. I knew that she was going to apologize, and I just wanted to talk to her one last time. I guess it's just that her reaching out to me brought up a lot of mixed emotions, and I guess I wasn't thinking straight. But whatever it is, I did go to meet her, and it's done now. And I don't think I would change my decision if I could go back in the past and do it. I needed some closure, and I got it, and I don't regret what I did. Sometimes you just have to forget about everybody else and do what you think is right. Even if it's a mistake, it's going to be your mistake. And that's what I believe. Update 1. I finally told my family that I had gone to visit Julia, and just as I had expected, they were not happy about it in the slightest. I met her last week, and I blocked her a couple of days back after she kept relentlessly bombarding me with texts and phone calls, demanding that I speak to her again and give her a chance to explain herself. I didn't know what she was going to say to me, but I didn't even want to find out anymore. I met her once and got my closure, but that's all that I needed from her, and it's not like she genuinely wanted to speak to me and make things right. She just needed my help, and I'm pretty sure that's the reason why she's even contacting me after the fight that we had at the restaurant. Anyway, I didn't want to speak to her again, and I knew that it was about time that I told my family about our meeting as well. So I sat them all down today, my parents and all my grandparents, and I explained everything to them. My parents were obviously upset that I hadn't discussed this with them, and I had just taken off without telling them who I was meeting, but they still seemed to understand. It was my grandparents who were really upset with me. They scolded me a lot, and I heard them out patiently because I deserved it. I should have spoken to them first. Mostly they were just worried that my mother would have tried to brainwash me and tried to make them look like the villain since they knew her well enough to expect it after they were done. I told them that the only reason I had met her was because I needed some closure, and I did not expect everyone to understand immediately why I had that thought process, but it was something that I needed to do, and I did it. The only thing that I was sorry about was that I did it behind their backs. But I promised them that I would never be dishonest with them ever again, and it seemed to pacify everyone. Then we started discussing the reason why Julia had called me there, and the things that she had said about my uncle wanting to reconcile with his parents and stuff. The one thing that all of us could agree on was the fact that there was definitely more to the situation than we were being LED on. If she was trying to manipulate me into getting back into the family, it meant that they were probably in trouble and needed some sort of help. Since Julia had said that her marriage was in trouble, and she had definitely seemed very distressed when she was on the phone. And even when she met me, my grandparents deduced that she was probably being truthful about my uncle being pissed at her. Now, whatever the truth is, we're not going to interfere because it's not our place to say anything. My grandparents were very clear about it. They said that they had stopped considering my uncle and Julia, their family, the day that they announced they were together while my father was still sick. The last straw was when my mother just gave me away, without even talking to them or giving them time to explain things to me. They just got lucky that my adoptive parents were kind enough to continue to allow them to be a part of my life. So, long story short, I have now blocked Julia. No matter what happens after this, I'm not going to be speaking to her again. I know that she's quite desperate to talk to me, since the last few messages that she sent me were begging me to talk to her and telling me that her marriage was falling apart, and so was her life, and she desperately needed me right now. I felt really guilty ignoring all of that. But honestly, what does she even expect me to do? Even if I wanted to, I really don't think that I would be able to get my grandparents to speak to her or my uncle. If I was in their place, I wouldn't want to speak to them either. So it's completely fair for me not to want to interact with her anymore. I know that she can just make more accounts and keep trying to get to me, but it's not going to work. So I have decided that if she tries to reach out to me again, then I'm going to tell her that I'm not interested. And if she bothers me, then I'm going to report her. I did overhear my grandparents discussing potential reasons as to why my uncle would want to contact them again after so many years. And they had been speculating that maybe they were having financial trouble. Since nobody from our family has been in touch with them, we don't really know what they've been doing. We know for a fact that they are still living here in the same city, but we don't know what they do for a living. Julia used to be a stay-at-home mom when I was living with her, but now I don't know. But one thing is for sure. If my grandparents are right, and Julia and my uncle are actually trying to reconcile with my grandparents because they are in financial trouble, I will know for a fact that they don't even deserve the bare minimum respect that they receive from other people. Because it is just disgusting human behavior reaching out to your daughter who you haven't spoken to in a decade, so she can fix the situation with your parents just because you need money. That's literally one of the cheapest things I can imagine people doing. And yeah, I really hope that she gets her come up. And so that's actually the case here. Update 2. Hey, so she reached out to me once again today. I had blocked her everywhere about 10 days ago. And after a week passed without any sign of her reaching out to me again, I thought that she had given up. But somehow she was able to find out where I go to school. And I guess that's why we shouldn't put out our personal information on public platforms. It was a lesson learned the hard way. Anyway, when I started walking back home from school today, she showed up on my way out of absolutely nowhere, and I was pretty taken aback. It happened about a block away from school, and I don't live very far from my school, so I usually just walk home. but she showed up in her car and started yelling at me to get in. I told her I was not going to get into her car because I did not trust her. And I said that if she insisted or tried to create drama, then I would start screaming right there in the middle of the street, and then she would be done for. She just told me she was not here to fight with me or bother me. She just wanted to talk to me. And she did not even care if I was not going to help her to reconcile with her parents. She just wanted to speak to me and reconcile with me at the very least. She claimed that everything had gone wrong the last time that we met, and she just wanted to make up for everything. She knew that I was going to misconstrue everything that she was saying as fake and think that she was putting up an act. But she wanted to tell me that that was not the case, that she really would love to make things right with me. I could literally hear how desperate she was in her voice, and I don't know why. I know I should have felt bad for her, but I just felt annoyed. So I told her to leave me alone. I did not want anything to do with her, and that's when her true colors started showing again. I'm actually pretty proud of myself for not falling for her act the first time around, since she was pretty good at pretending that she was sorry, and she really wanted to make things right with me. Anyway, as soon as I told her to leave me alone, I guess I had a bit of a tone, and she completely freaked out at me because of it. She started cursing at me and said that she was trying really hard to talk to me politely, but if I was going to be like this, then she was going to make sure that she screwed up my life. The woman literally started threatening me, saying I had better watch my back and stuff now, but I just found it very amusing because what was she even going to do? Anyway, I just continued to walk while she cursed at me, and eventually she just drove off. After flipping me off, I was so relieved. Once I got back home, I told my parents about it, and once again, everyone gathered around to discuss what was going to be done. Since she has threatened me, we have grounds for a restraining order, so we are guessing that we are probably going to go that way. And I don't have an issue with it. I would actually prefer that so that she cannot bother me again and again. Update 3. So a couple of days ago, my parents filed for a restraining order against Julia. And after she was served, that's when my uncle decided to reach out to his parents finally. And just like they had predicted, it was obviously because of money. They had been running a confectionery together for the past couple of years, but it has not been doing well for the last few years. So they were in desperate need of money. They knew that if they reached out to their parents directly, it would not work. And that's why they came up with this whole act. But unfortunately, Julia lost patience with me, and it screwed everything up for them. So who knows, they might even get divorced because of this, and I'll be the happiest person if that happens. My uncle is still trying to suck up to his parents, trying to get them to give him some money and keep saying that he has nothing to do with the way Julia behaved with me. But as their only son, he deserves to get some help from them. Julia, on the other hand, is taking a very strange approach and has decided to be as nasty as she possibly can to her parents and me, and has been talking crap about us online without any fear of the consequences. All that's doing is making our case stronger, so I hope she continues. We are pretty positive that we are going to be able to get the restraining order against her because it's pretty obvious that she is unhinged now. I don't even know why she's fighting it because the other day she made it pretty clear that she wants nothing to do with me. Anyway, it doesn't matter in the first place because I'm going to be leaving for college in the fall and I don't think it's going to be likely for her to show up there since she's struggling with money. Regardless of whatever happens, my parents and my family are always going to be by my side, so I don't really think that I have anything to worry about.